The series, Behind the Curtain, presents information in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanation, but not necessarily the only ones to the mysteries we will examine. Behind the Curtain has traveled the internet searching for mysteries, uncovered conspiracies, and to bring knowledge to our viewing audience. This is the work of our fact-checker, the AI formerly known as the Red Queen, and a not-so-highly skilled writer. Without further ado, we now present to you Dr. C. Katz Behind the Curtain.
Thank you for the mostly plagiarized introduction, Doctor. Today we will be examining Scary Music, Please.
When we last left off in part 1 of Beauty and the Beast, the true villain, it was established that Gaston and the prince acted reasonably in their given circumstances, and any reasonable person, in the same context and situation, would have defended their homes in a similar manner. The evidence against Bill is circumstantial at best. The movie only provided a mid-level amount of background information suggesting that Bill is a killer. Then she manipulated men and used them to elevate herself to a lofty social position in the community. This part of the theory can only be rated 2 magic bullets. Additionally, the last video scrutinized the enchantress who was mucking about dispensing unchecked justice without popular mandate or official sanction from any ruling authority. But, while her version of justice was uncompromising, it was non-lethal. She was only minor in comparison to the real villain.
Before we can establish the identity of the primary villain of Beauty and the Beast, we need to agree that all Disney movies are related to each other one way or another. Additionally, it has been proven that exposition, especially in Disney movies, are done through song.
To unmask this villain, we need only to start asking questions. We are told through the exposition of one of the songs that Beauty and the Beast was a tale as old as time. How can this be?
The original story of Beauty and the Beast was first published in 1740 by French novelist Gabriel Suzanne Bebeau. When compared to other fairy tales, the story isn't exactly that old.
What story was Mrs. Potts referring to? Could the story that was old as time, in fact, be her story? Mrs. Potts, if that was her original name, has left a trail of bodies stretching from France to the United States. Every death has had the same themes, symbols and similar methods of operation employed throughout the centuries. Early accounts place our suspect in jolly old England at the time of King Roderick I. In the short version, King Roderick killed his brother and takes over the throne. Mrs. Potts, or Princess Gwendolyn in this particular era, is forced to marry King Roderick. Eventually the rightful king, Griswold, retakes the throne and Mrs. Potts is by his side.
On a side note, the true king was recognized by the purple pimp in her birthmark, and Mrs. Potts worked with a witch named Griselda. Additionally, we see the outlaw man, the Black Fox, working to restore power to the king. In the original Snow White, the evil queen went by a number of aliases such as, but not limited to, the Evil Queen, Queen Grunhilda, Queen Ingrid, Wicked Queen, Snow Queen, and the Witch. Can we safely assume that all these women are the same person? There is enough circumstantial evidence to make that conclusion. 2 out of the 3 use poison. All 3 have a royalty fetish. All 3 use magic in one way or the other. Even without using magic to extend their lifespan, all 3 could have easily existed within the same era.
Information about Mrs. Potts is sketchy at best, and we can only speculate on what happened next. Whether her husband died or was murdered, Mrs. Potts shows up again in history as Madame Valentine in 1803 France. In this particular instance, she is tangled up in the affairs of Napoleon. He orders the capture of the notorious highwayman known as the Purple Mask, who routinely rescues imprisoned nobles and harasses the revolutionary officials.
This story takes place 11 years after the French Revolution. The outlaw Scarlet Pimpernel was replaced by the new purple mask. The symbols we see repeated are purple, Pimpernel, outlaw, and royalty.
Still residing in France, Mrs. Potts takes up residence at a local castle working for an 11-year-old Prince Adam. We can speculate that she was in the planning stages of a coup when the enchantress monkey-wrenched her operation. This hypothesis suggests that Mrs. Potts was readying a replacement for Prince Adam. The king's replacement was Chip. Not only does Chip look like the prince in every way, for example the same eye and hair color, but he was roughly the same age. If the beast would age normally while the staff was time-locked, Chip shouldn't have even been alive at the time of the enchantress's arrival.
According to the Brunello Notario, MD, she wrote that the average age at menopause has been around 51.5 for women born before the 1920s. How is this old woman still giving birth to children, no less than 12 of them, even at her age? We are told that Chip is the 12th child of Mrs. Potts. How is this old heifer still cranking out babies when her uterus is dried up and queefing dust? And where the is Mr. Potts?
Is it possible that Mrs. Potts was preparing and grooming Chip to replace Prince Adam? She could have used magic, which has been shown to exist in this world. With magic, a bit of social engineering, and knowledge of the royal court of both Britain and France, she could have easily positioned herself among the staff and worked her way up through Adam's royal court. While the enchantress may have slowed down her plans, she didn't thwart her overall objective. With the arrival of Belle, she saw a comrade who was already manipulating people to further her goals. Once the spell was lifted, her plan was ready for the next stage. In 1916, she had killed or manipulated her way in to become the Dowager Empress Marie, paternal grandmother of Princess Anastasia, mother of Tsar Nicholas II. Most likely she used one of her 12 children as Tsar Nicholas. But her fortunes changed and she was forced to flee France after the Germans swarmed in 1940. Growing older and on the run from the Nazis, Mrs. Potts needed a way to replenish her youth. What better way than by using magic? After all, it worked out for the enchantress. Once back on her home turf of Great Britain, she changed her name to Miss Eglantine Price and started dabbling in the occult arts as an apprentice witch. But the lust for power and authority was still there. She needed more. Upon fleeing to the New World, she changed her name to Myra Leeds. Myra Leeds kills her husband, big surprise, and attaches herself to an attorney. Eventually, the lawyer develops a guilty conscience and decided to bring her to justice. But having years of experience and magical powers, dodging the law is only second nature to her. Changing her name, like Madonna changes hairstyles, Mrs. Potts ends up going by the name Mrs. Eleanor Shaw Iselin. She marries a weak-willed John Iselin. Even at her age, her hunger for power was only matched by her lust for murder. She entered into a plot with the Chinese communists to take over the United States by the use of one of her sons. The Chinese communists used Raymond Iselin and his platoon and turned them into sleeper agents, similar to what might have happened with Bill in the mid-1800s.
Mrs. Potts was given the ironic code name, the Queen of Diamonds, most likely due to her quest. During the events of the Manchurian Candidate, she was nearly killed when one of her sons rejected his programming and turned his weapon on her and his father. The Queen of Diamonds was forced to flee, but to where?
Mrs. Potts hid out in a place where no one would look for her, the sleepy little town of Cabot Cove, Maine. This time she changed her name to Jessica Fletcher and took up writing. For whatever reason, either to fuel her blood magic or she enjoyed murdering, the bloodbath continued. Whether murdering people directly, social engineering a scapegoat, brainwashing, or turning them into Manchurian candidates, the town of Cabot Cove was transformed into the killing fields. By the end of her run, the charming little town racked up 21 murders per year.
This is an eyebrow-raising statistic because the town only had a population of 3,560. Even the FBI said the city was one of the most dangerous in the world. Even Tijuana, which is classified as one of the most dangerous cities in the world, had 130 homicides per 100,000 people. But the numbers pale in comparison next to Cabot Cove, with over 149 murders for every 100,000 people. This isn't counting the trail of bodies that followed her during her book tours, vacations, and occasional trips out of town.
Jessica Fletcher, or whatever name she is going by now, is a violent and the most prolific serial killer of all time. She is willing to use magic or whatever is in her bag of tricks to mow down whoever gets in her way. If you ever encounter Mrs. Potts, also known as the Queen of Diamonds, don't confront her or you will be the next on her body count. But what do I know? I'm just a cat.